attack till now, Gragas has been being picked a little bit more, and showing that he is a viable choice. He's not picked all the time, but he is picked, and he is viable, and he's got great lane control, and he's got great counter initiation with his ultimate, and he's got super high burst with his Q, E, and R combo. I mean, it's like a 1500 damage burst on somebody. That's crazy. So because of that, I'm moving him up a little bit, and yeah, that's it. Trundle has moved up into tier 2. Trundle, pretty much the same reason. I felt he was a little bit too low. Lane Trundle was, I opened my eyes to the lane Trundle. I see now. Before I did not. And as my shitty gospel preacher converted to God. Yeah, he got moved up because I feel his laning is a little bit better than I thought, and he deserved to move up a bit. Galio was moved up to tier 2. Galio moved up to tier 2 because a lot of teams are picking him a lot now. He's a great counter to a lot of bruisers top. You can sit there and farm safely and get a lot of damage, and then he can actually counter a lot of magical AP carries middle because he's got so much magic resistance, right? So he can fill a lot of roles on a team, and on top of that, his initiation is the best initiation in the game. I mean, you're like, what's up, I'm Galio, flash, fucking attack me, and then I burst you for like 600, 700 damage, something crazy like that. So that's really good. A lot of teams are picking him up in tournament play. So yeah, I moved him up a little bit. Ezreal's been moved to the tier 2. Ezreal moved up for a couple reasons. One, his laning control in solo lane and a dual lane is pretty damn good. And the second reason is his damage is fucking crazy. And those are the only two reasons I'm moving Ezreal up, and I'm not going to say anything else about it because that's truthfully it. His laning's pretty good, and his damage is fucking crazy when you get fed. He's one of the best snowball AD carries in the game. Casson has moved up because he got some buffs. He's a little bit more viable, I think. Because of those, his laning is a lot better, so he's moved up a little bit into tier 2. Ryze has actually moved up into tier 2 as well. Ryze has moved up because he's such a crazy late game carry. Ryze laning phase is pretty good. It's decent. It's there are better AP carries for him for the laning phase. Lots of people can beat Ryze, but if you pick Ryze at the right moment, Ryze just becomes this. Ryze is kind of like Jax. His laning phase is pretty good, but the more you let Ryze or Jax farm, the stronger they get. And Ryze just becomes this fucking unmovable wall that is an AP carry and a tank at the same time. I mean, if you let him get late game, he's gonna literally hit you like a fucking semi truck, and he's gonna not take any damage. He's gonna get some spell damage. He's gonna Frozen Heart, Banshee's Veil, and fucking a Rod of Ages and Archangels and a Void Staff and then Sword Boots. Right? He's gonna have those fucking items, that kind of stuff. But he's gonna be an amazing tank. He's gonna have tons of MR. He's gonna have tons of armor, and he's going to hit you, as I said, like a semi-truck. So that's kind of what people are realizing now, because he's kind of being picked up a little bit in more tournament play. It's just because he's such a fantastic late game carry, and lots of these games go 30, 40, 50 minutes are very common times to see, and Ryze really does get fed in that time. So if you're a good Ryze player, fuck yeah, play Ryze, because he's honestly, I'd say Ryze beside Vigar is probably the best late mage late game. They just scale so well into late game that I think Ryze is definitely up there in terms of just a godlike late game. York has actually moved up to tier 2. We haven't seen a lot of York on my previous tier list. I've been talking about him like he's not that bad. I had him floating around tier 3, and I was like he's really not that bad. I don't know why people are hating on him so much, and lo and behold, people are playing York now since a whole bunch of other, a couple other people got nerfed since the last patch. Stuff got changed a little bit, and York is being picked up in the USA versus Germany matches. York was picked actually 3 times in a row, and every time York was picked, the York team won. I mean, I'm sure that's just a coincidence, but York did have a great laning phase. He is really strong. He can double someone his AD carry. His sustain is good. York's always been fucking fantastic versus people who don't have sustain. If you lane a York for someone who doesn't have a good amount of sustain, he's just gonna beat them hands down. And this is the whole thing. It's win your lane, win your game. What does York do? Wins your lane. So York has a great counter pick to a lot of champions too. He's also a great counter pick to champions like Lee Sin, Morgana, Ezreal. Anyone with a ranged skill shot that can do that, he can actually block with those 4 minions he gets up. He has the ultimate and then 3 different minions. He actually blocks all those skill shots, so you can counter a lot of people's damage just with these ghouls, just spamming them in a team fight. You don't realize how much damage it absorbs, but these ghouls do a fuckload of damage that just absorb because he's just spamming them all the time, right? So Yorick is actually kind of this like hidden, really good counter to skill shot champions because of how many minions he has, and those all take damage or absorb the hits, right? So, kind of something to think about. Maybe you should pick up Yorick, maybe you shouldn't. He's great versus champs without sustain, so if you're going to play him versus someone who doesn't have a lot of sustain, and you might be surprised how well you do. Nasus, I've moved up to tier 3. I know you guys are probably like, fuck Nasus, it's like tier 2, tier 1, I love Nasus, I fucking love Nasus. I know, it's just I need to see more of him before I move him up even higher, and I feel I moved up to the top of tier 3, and I really feel he's going to sit there for a little bit longer, maybe even next week if I see him, or maybe after China, or the New York tournament. I'll watch that, and get all the champs that have been moved up and down in there. And we're really going to see how well Nasus does, or if he even gets picked. And if he does, I can make an accurate judgment. But, until then, I really feel that, I don't know a lot about that champion yet, so I'm going to leave him in Tier 3. Jarvan, I've moved down to Tier 4 because... Moved down Jarvan to Tier 4 because I don't think he's that viable in competitive play. He's a weak solo top, he's a decent jungle, and that's all he's good for. And I think Riot way over nerfed him, and that's that. LeBlanc can move down to tier 4, not because she's super bad. I moved him down because he's kind of bad, but LeBlanc is a tier 4 champion just because she's so rare for a circumstance where she's going to be really good. She can be very well played into a competitive team comp. It just requires that right team comp for her. So it's not in terms of she's bad. It's in terms of what viable position are we going to throw LeBlanc in, and that's all it is. That's also how the tier list works. You guys can't forget. It's not all just based on champion power. It's based on who gets picked where. As we saw, here's a great example of what I'm talking about. Katarina and Master Yi are godlike. Let me call this again. Fucking rewind what I just said. Godlike when there's no CC on the other team. Those champions are fucking godlike. They are unstoppable killing machines that will rape your entire team. If the other team doesn't have a lot of CC to slow you down or counter you or interrupt Katarina's ulti or CCE or exhaust and stuff like that, if they don't have that, those champions are the fucking best champions in the game. Yet, what is this game always filled with? Tons of fucking CC and tons of counters. So, they're not always that viable to be picked, hence them being hard to place on a team. They're not essentially bad champions, they're just harder to place on a lot of team comps. So that's what I'm talking about when I say LeBlanc isn't, her damage is fucking great, her single target burst is insane, right? But, finding a place where she's, viable to always, go on there and, not be focused and, have the good laning phase versus somebody, they're not always going to be there, and that's what I'm talking about. Alright, but that's enough about LeBlanc. Some new champs. I forgot to place Wukong in my last one. Oh, whoops. Wukong I actually placed in tier 4 because I don't think he's that viable. I think Riot could buff him a little bit, make his laning phase a little bit better, or even make him a viable jungler. That would be cool. I just don't think he's that great. Riven I've actually placed into tier 3. This slut riding the sword over here, I placed her into tier 3. Where is he? Riven, right behind Vladimir. Those little pseudo buffs that she got, or not pseudo buffs, I don't even know what the fuck, that doesn't even make sense. I just made up a word, or I didn't make up a word, I just placed a word where it doesn't belong. Anyways, I placed her in tier 3 because those little hotfix buffs that she got are actually not bad, and they made her laning phase a lot better, and her late game is fucking godlike too. You can, if you have a decent amount of farm, if you're as farmed as someone else late game, you're going to hit them for 500 auto attacks due to her passive and stuff like that. It's just awesome. Her late game is probably one of the best in terms of AD. Her scaling, all her abilities scale, the best AD scaling ratios in the game. So the more farmed you get on her, the better you get late game. So if you have a champion that, Riven can beat in lane, fucking pick that bitch. Because you're going to do crazy amounts of damage. Skarner placed into hard to place because he doesn't do anything. I'm not going to say anything else because he doesn't do anything. He's a decent jungler, but he doesn't do anything. He's not a good laner because he doesn't do anything, and he's not a good bot lane because he doesn't do anything. So he doesn't do anything, so he's in hard to place. That's another thing. Some champions are hard to place because they're fucking hard to place because they don't do anything. And Talon has been placed into tier 2 because he's actually got a lot of burst. He's like a true melee assassin, or physical assassin rather. Because his damage is so crazy. He can beat a lot of champs top lane. He can actually go solo mid versus a lot of AP champions too. He's not bad at all. he's really strong. His burst is crazy, and his survivability is high. So that's essentially why I'm placing Talon into tier 2. This has been my draft mode tier list update. I'll have another update for you guys in 9 days, and I'll fix all these other champions that should be moved around, and all the other junk that you need to do. I don't want to do too many updates at once, so you guys don't have to watch like a fucking 7-hour video of me talking, making an ass of myself while I talk. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. New updates coming in a fucking little while, and yeah, that's it. I always end these. How am I supposed to end these? I need to have a fucking outro, that's that, and then make another fucking winky face or some shit.